Welcome to DocSports.com's In the Paint. Scott Spreitzer here. Raphael Esparza, Craig Trapp. First time I've been able to work with Craig, and known about Craig for quite some time, and looking forward to plenty of videos to be working with Craig over the next several years, God willing, Doc's willing, all that kind of good stuff. But anyway, guys, we're going to talk a lot of basketball today. Of course, In the Paint is all about college basketball. We're going to be here each and every Tuesday throughout the college basketball season into March Madness. So looking forward to it. We're going to feature a few games. We got the man, Raphael Esparza, the man behind the counter, who's going to throw a couple of games at us with projected lines for the week, and a couple of big games in the SEC, top 25 national title contenders. And so we'll get to all that in a bit. Of course, our best bets at the end of the show. Also wanted to mention, coming up at the end of the show, we're going to give you guys a passcode that's going to get you 10% off daily packages over at DocSports.com. And before we jump into it, listen, if you've not yet become a member at Doc Sports, real cool way to give it a trial run. You click on the link below the video, get yourself set up for that free $60 account, and then you can use those free $60 on any of our daily packages, again, over at DocSports.com, any of the cappers at Doc Sports. Guys, let's get right to it, man. A little bit of what did they learn from this past weekend and a week of college basketball. Raphael, let's kick things off with you and kind of what you saw from a betting perspective over the last several days.
Well, what I learned is the South Point stole my prop bet for college basketball tournaments. I was the one that opened up SEC minus 150 plus 120 for the field. And then Vinny Marulo, my old boss over at Caesars Palace in the Sportsbooks in 1996, decides to put it up over at South Point. So that's what I learned, not to keep him off my email chain. Vinny, I'm talking to you. I know you watched the show. But what I also learned for this, and Scott, you know where we're from. We like to watch the Mountain West. And I know they've always put duds in when it comes to tournament. One year they had 6 teams and all 6 of them didn't even make it to the weekend. I think this year they'll get 3. This year these 3 can be maybe sleepers and maybe knock someone out. I did New Mexico. I think it'd be very sleeper. San Diego State will always have success on there. So there's 3 teams in there that I'm looking from now until March Madness. What can they do in the tournament? I really like the way they've been playing. Mountain West has been producing some really, really good basketball for the past 3 to 5 years. And we're seeing it again this year. UNLV had a great 3-game winning streak, beating up some teams in the Mountain West. I like Mountain West to maybe get 3, but those 3 are going to be tough outs. So I'm going to keep on watching the Mountain West. I think they're going to be tough outs in the tournament.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a under-the-radar game, if you will, in the Mountain West coming up a little bit later in the show. Raphael, I got to mention real quick that, I've done a lot of work over the years, not from behind the counter, but on air with Vinny Magliulo, with Jimmy Vaccaro, with Chris Andrews. I'm going to have to get over to the South Point. It's about a 20-minute drive from where I live, but I'll get over there, and I'll have to bring that up with Vinny because what a great guy. But I guess he's not, and I hope he gave you credit. No. No, of course not.
Which I don't care. These sports books, I mean, they know when my email chain goes to all these sports books, US and stuff like that. They know, and I mean, I don't care that I don't care. If they
of course not.
But
yeah.
Vinny, especially Vinny, he hired me in 1996. Yeah. He gave me the job at Caesars Palace Racing Sportsbook, so I got nothing but love for him.
I like to give him a hard time because he looks like he's 30 years old. I think he's aged in about 35 years.
I look older than him.
So do I. Craig, man, it's great to work with you. Great to have you come over to DocSports.com. You've been over for a few weeks now, and just a fantastic addition to the family at DocSports.com. Any thoughts from what you saw this past weekend or week in college baskets?
Well, I think the last 3 weeks, as we've kind of seen, as I always say, the transition from football to basketball, you start to take the deeper dives into not just the big leagues that we all, obviously watch and follow, but you start going down. I think this year is the most wide open tournament. I said last year was the most wide open tournament. I think this year is going to be even crazier because if you just go down through the top 10, there's not one of them, including, a nice win from Auburn this past week, including them or Duke, that you can say, hey, this team can win 6 games in a row and is going to be an odds-on favorite. To me, I think this is the year where we're going to see a 5 or plus seed win the national championship.
I don't mind that at all. We did a show a couple of weeks ago with Raphael, and I was talking about St. John's as being a team at the time to plunk some money down on. At the time, they were like 40 or 50 to 1. So I'm glad to hear that you're on board with a, not a top seed potentially. going all the way and winning those 6 games in March to get that championship.
A fifth seed is usually 6-1 or higher.
Oh, yeah.
6 to 8-1 to win, to cut down when we put prop bets up when the bracket gets ready to go.
Yeah, good stuff. I got to tell you guys, I've been asked so many times over the years when I'm doing radio shows, and I'm going to get to what I learned over this past week or so. But I'm always asked about, hey, Scott, I don't have, a lot of time to follow all these teams. There's, 364 teams basically that we're following. And, I work a full-time job and then some. And, what's the best advantage or what's the best way to attack a college basketball card on a daily basis? Got a couple. I got the one that I've used all my life. I mean, I was a 18, 19-year-old kid when I started betting in Las Vegas after I moved out here. They weren't too fond of checking IDs back in the day. So I got to stand in line at the Stardust 8 o'clock in the morning to make those early bets. But, and I used to tell people back then, I still tell them to this day, pick a conference, follow one conference if you don't have time. Start to finish, all the teams. Mine was the Missouri Valley back in the day. But it's not a bad idea to do that. But the one that I wanted to bring up now, maybe more of a modern day situation, man, these teams are shooting threes in college basketball, maybe not near the rate of the NBA, the boring NBA right now, as far as from a aesthetic perspective, but they are shooting a lot. And a lot of these teams aren't getting to the free throw line. We've talked on this show about Kansas being like 362nd in free throw to field goal attempt ratio. So I went back on Monday afternoon and I looked at the Ken Palm's top 15. And out of that top 15, I was like, man, if you just kind of stay away from some of these teams, and I'm going to give those out in just a second, you're doing a lot better with your bankroll right now. And I'm talking about looking back in conference action, roughly 8 to 10 games per team. So outside of Houston, guys, really teams that are, outside the top 200 in free throw attempt to field goal attempt ratio have been bad bets. And I'm talking about Auburn, Duke, Florida, Tennessee, Kansas, Texas Tech, Marquette, and Gonzaga. Those teams over the last, 8 to 10 games apiece have gone 27 and 44 against the spread. All but Gonzaga shoot a high number of threes. Gonzaga's not shooting a ton of threes this year, but all of those teams I just mentioned don't get to the free throw line. They're all outside the top 200. And then there's Iowa State, Purdue, Alabama, Arizona in Ken Palm's top 15 that do get to the free throw line. They're all top 90 or better when it comes to free throw to field goal attempt ratio. They're driving the paint. They're drawing fouls. Those teams combined, how about 29-8 against the spread in the last 8 to 10 games each? So I tell people these are things that aren't hard to follow. You click on a site like a Ken Palm site, you can see free throw to field goal attempt ratio. And basically what you're doing is staying away from the teams that don't draw fouls. Auburn, those teams I just mentioned that are bad against the spread of late, every one of them has a chance to win the national title. But you might not want to be jumping on board every night when it comes to laying the points. And in most cases, they are laying the points, guys. So just a couple of thoughts there when I get asked that question, what would you do if you don't have a lot of time to bet on college basketball? And I came up with those couple.
One thing I'll jump in on that one. You just said those teams, Auburn, Duke, and stuff. That's Joe Public money right there. They're betting those teams because why? They're on TV every time we put the channel. Auburn, Duke, all those teams who can hit free throws, who jack up threes like the Boston Celtics are in a gymnasium. That's why the books always have a really good success when it comes to college basketball, because the stats that you just said, they're not betting the Iowa States. They're not betting these teams. They're betting the big bloods, the teams that jack up threes. So that's a great stat. And that's another, I always tell people, just because that game's on TV does not need you need to put action on that game.
Oh, I've been on 11 p.m. Eastern time games out here on the West Coast way too often. I see Trapp, it used to be the first one up and docs the videos. I go on there at 11:30 at night Pacific time, or, basically to do my work after I watch these late night West Coast. Trapp's already up. I'm like, this is great. I get to watch what he's doing, maybe take a couple of plays from him every night. But it's been, I just been with that West Coast guy going with those West Coast games quite a bit over the course of my time as a sports bettor. Let's get to midweek marquee matchup. We got a big game coming up on Wednesday night, gang. It's the clash between Alabama and Mississippi State from Starkville. I noticed on Tuesday afternoon, we're cutting this video late Tuesday afternoon, and the books open Miss State a 1-point home favorite. A couple of the low-limit books jumped out early, and they set it as a pick, immediately went to 1. But here we go. We're putting it to work, gang. We have Alabama and a top 20 free throw attempt to field goal attempt ratio against a Mississippi State team that shoots too many threes. and are outside the top 200 when it comes to free throw attempt to field goal attempt ratio. Now, that doesn't mean automatic bet, but Craig, your thoughts on this SEC clash?
Oh, to me, it's just one of those, anytime I see a ranked team, higher ranked team, they're on the road, especially the SEC. I think the SEC is by far the deepest conference, which if you'd have told me a decade ago that the SEC was where, there's going to be more good teams in the SEC than the Big Ten, I'd have been like, you're crazy. But we've seen it. The SEC is not just a football conference anymore. It's a basketball conference and a very tough place to go on the road in the SEC, no matter, even with the expansion of the conference. I thought that might water down both the SEC and the Big Ten, but it really has, been pretty good for us bettors if you take the team that's at home. And, Mississippi State doesn't have the horses. Let's be honest. If this is a neutral site game, Alabama should win probably 70% of the time. Coach Oates has really built that team. But to me, it's, you kind of got to follow the number here. And I like Mississippi State to win this game in a nice little upset. I think we continue to see that these home teams, in a minor upset, maybe not as far as a point spread, but as far as the rankings are concerned. And that's where this one is. I think you got to take Mississippi State, either if it's -1, +1. I think that's where you're going to get it, where it's going to end up. I think Mississippi State wins this one. I don't know how, because they don't have the horses, but it just has been very good for me as a handicapper and a bettor this year if you take the lower the ranked team to lose on the road in the SEC this year.
Raphael?
Well, two offshore books have +1 for you, Craig. So if you want to shop around, usually we see copy and paste on that. I think the public will bet on Alabama because everyone knows about Alabama basketball, so Mississippi State on this one. I jumped on a total 167. If Mississippi State's gonna win this game, they need to play defense and hold back the fast pace that Alabama will want to play. Yes, Alabama has covered 7 of the last 10, but Mississippi State knows what the legs that Alabama has on their backcourt, and if they speed up the game, then they get blown out. Mississippi State needs to play a half-court style offense, control the boards, then they can maybe steal this one. I'm looking at the total, open up at 167, missed it because I was doing prop bets all afternoon, didn't get the bet. So still 166.5. I'm going to wait to see if those Alabama bettors push my total back upwards. Because if you're betting Alabama, you're probably just going to parlay Bama and over, and then the other Mississippi State under. So I'm hoping those Bama bettors that had a bad football season turn into their basketball side and bet Alabama basketball this year. Because let me guess, SEC's a football conference. They didn't win it this year. What are you talking about? It's not a football conference anymore. But they could cut down the nets in college basketball.
I think it's a good correlated parlay. If you like Alabama, you play the over. If you like Mississippi State, you're going to want to play the under. They've got to switch things up, and I think they will here because their last 5 games, looking at Miss State, they took 150 3-point shots in the last 5 games combined, and they've made less than 30% of those. So I think it's one of those things where you got to just say, guys, we got to start choosing our shots a little bit better, especially against a team like Alabama that's going to want to get it up and down the floor and fire away threes and drive the paint and all that kind of good stuff. So behind the counter, guys, and this is one of the reasons I like working with Raphael so much, is because he's got all that experience behind the counter. Not to say he's old or anything, Raphael, there, but he's had a lot of experience behind the counter, both in Vegas and with offshore books. I got to ask you before we jump into this, I hear a little rumor you're doing a lot of Taylor Swift props for the Super Bowl.
Yep, they want anywhere between 150 to 200 this year of Taylor Swift props. Hopefully, I won't get kicked out. Last year in Vegas, FanDuel tried to kick me out on Media Row because they knew I was the guy that did most of those Taylor Swift prop bets, so they got mad. So I'm going to be the first one to put up a Peyton Manning, Eli Manning prop bet for their field goal because they can't do it over at FanDuel, losers.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. I remember the day when we had to run to the Strip when Jay Cornegay was at the IP, the Imperial Palace, and he was like the first one to really give out like an encyclopedia of 14, 15 pages front and back of props. So we'd go there, we'd run to the IP, we'd run over to the Westgate, we'd run to a couple of other places, and we had to be all over town. People would be waiting in line for 2 hours the night they opened the props. It's so nice to have the internet. Thank you, Al Gore, for inventing the whole thing, making life easier on all of us. Guys, let's go behind the counter. As we mentioned, couple of big Saturday games. Let's start with Florida at Tennessee. Raphael, Florida whipped the Vols by 30 points just 3 weeks ago. They were a 3-point home favorite in that one. What do you do with this number?
Well, if you had Al Gore ticket, you can cash that right now for watching this show for an Al Gore ticket. But I think this one's going to be a very interesting matchup on this one. I made Tennessee a small favorite. We have to. They're playing this week or tonight. We have to see what the outcome of that one. So keep an eye on that. I'm also keeping an eye for the totals. Probably going to be anywhere between 146, 147, but that could also switch tonight. I think Tennessee is the play here. They're at home. SEC home court advantage has been very powerful lately. They were struggling when it first started. Now it's been very powerful for the SEC. I think Tennessee can pull this one out, but it's going to be a great matchup. I can't wait to watch it. I can't believe I'm so excited to watch SEC basketball. I'm the biggest SEC football hater, but this year SEC basketball has been really, really entertaining.
Craig, I think we'll see a different approach by Tennessee than they had in the first game. And they were out of it from the get-go. They were down 19 at the half. So they had to shoot a ton of threes, and they went 4 for 29. I would suspect we see them trying to work the ball a little bit inside the arc at the start of this one.
Well, Tennessee's just a different beast, and every team in college basketball, at home versus the road. And it's a defensive team. There's not many defensive teams in college hoops, but Coach Barnes plays defense. And, he's not winning shootouts very often in those type of games that Florida kind of got away from them. If they have to play catch up, it's just not the way Tennessee, especially, last year they had Connect, great 3-point shooter, not the greatest 3-point shooting team. So obviously the way teams jack up threes, they're kind of the opposite now. They comparatively, I should say. But to me, I think you have to get revenge here. You got to take Tennessee if it's going to be a small number. And I had a big play on the under in the first game. It went under. I think this one will be an under game as well. I think Florida is a dangerous team. Out of the SEC teams that, they maybe don't get enough talk about, I think Florida is a dangerous team to win it all. But I think in this spot, you take Tennessee in the under.
It's a physical team, Florida. I agree with you, man. I think this team, long-term, maybe not in this game, but boy, they just got everything you need, I think, when it comes to making a run for the national championship in March. The other game we wanted to talk about was Auburn at Ole Miss on Saturday, and Raphael, Johnny Broom is back for the Tigers. What do you make this number?
Yeah, this one's going to be ugly. Auburn is probably one of the biggest bet team all season long. I actually was in a conference a couple of days ago talking about college basketball, and they said every time Auburn's on TV, they're getting hammered. The public loves betting Auburn. I don't know if maybe Charles Barkley is telling all his buddies to bet Auburn, but they will have it be. So you have to make them probably a 6 or 7, knowing that you're going to probably be lopsided right when you push this number. 70% of the tickets coming in on Auburn. I hate putting that big of a number, but if you're going to be lopsided right when you post it, post a high number so you can get back some of that good number. If you post on Friday, you'll be able to get some buyback on a Saturday morning. Probably going to be 7. I think the total will probably be 147 on this one, but I think Auburn they're going to have no problem winning this game against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is garbage. They can't wait for football season to start back up again. I just don't like this Ole Miss at home or on the radio. I don't like Ole Miss right now.
I like Chris Beard, but man, they ticked me off the other night. I was doing a show with Matt Humans, and we both had big plays on Ole Miss over A&M at home, and they just let that lead collapse. They were up 6-7 the whole game. They were laying 3. They're up, I think, 5 or 6 with about a minute to go. Now, that doesn't guarantee you're going to win a team win a game that you're laying 3 points with, but I think they scored 2 points like in the final 90 seconds of the game at home. I think they made 3 free throws the entire game, going back to the whole free throw thing. But Craig, your thoughts, Auburn, Ole Miss?
It's kind of a letdown spot, I will say, for Auburn. This is probably a game I'll stay away from. Auburn's played – the SEC is just brutal this year. And so you play a couple of these high-ranked teams, and you go on the road and you could play like a top 25 team, and it's considered a letdown spot because maybe it's not one of the premier highly ranked SEC teams. I also think this Auburn defense, they really can play defense. Bruce Pearl, maybe going back, I think it was Milwaukee, right, when he was in the tournament. And even at Tennessee, he's always had good defensive teams. And he's got these guys that are great athletes and future NBA guys playing defense, which is hard to do to get these kids nowadays. So I would probably lean towards the under. And I would stay away from the side in this one. I just think it's a possible letdown spot, even though Auburn is much more talented.
Right now, and it's early, we got a couple days to go, I lean Ole Miss in this one, guys. Auburn 1-6 against the spread their last 7. They've had 3 road wins and a road loss in their 4 true road games. And the 3 wins came by 5, 3, and 2 points against Texas, South Carolina, and Georgia. I'm a big Chris Beard fan of X's and O's, maybe not off the court, but on the court, he just does such a great job. And I think this is like one of those spots where he's going to have his team focused. But again, that's one of those things where kind of got to wait and see how the line comes out Friday. I think it'll be real close, obviously, to what our lines maker, Raphael Esparza, just said. All right, guys, let's go on to the radar. Each and every Tuesday, we take a look at a couple of teams that are kind of fighting it out for a big dance spot. And, Utah State probably going to be about a 5.5-point favorite on Saturday or thereabouts. That's assuming that the Aggies take care of business against UNLV on Wednesday, which they should in a revenge spot. New Mexico's off until Saturday. But, Craig, we're talking about two teams looking to land in the big dance. I think if the season ended today and neither one of these teams won the Mountain West, Utah State's in. But despite being 17-4, I think New Mexico has a little bit of work left to do. What are your thoughts?
I mean, they're going to have to probably not have any bad losses. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You have to, it's okay you lose to Utah State. They're a highly ranked team. Yeah. You can't go and have a lose to an Air Force or Wyoming, those type Fresno State. You have to take care of business outside of the conference. Now, last year, it was much, like the top to bottom of the league was greater. So you could lose some of those games. I didn't think it killed you. This year, it's more top heavy. Utah State at home is very, very good. I mean, one of the best environments to watch basketball this year. If you watched, I think it was the Boise State game. I mean, what a environment that one was. And you could say the same thing, New Mexico, tough place to play. And so these are like the same team, just, when you play at the different stadiums. I play Utah State when they're at home. I usually fade them on the road, and same thing with New Mexico. So I definitely would probably be playing Utah State here at home. What do we think the projected number is going to be here, Raphael?
I mean, Utah State's going to be the favorite just because of what you just said, the home dominance that they have on this one, especially how they took care of Boise State at home. And I'm sorry, Boise State and New Mexico on roads, that's totally not even close to apples and orange on that one. So Utah State will be a clear favorite in this one. It's going to be very interesting to see what Utah State is a good first half team. They always come out strong in that one. Maybe take a shot at the first half number if you can get it like around 4, 3.5, pending on what the opening number is on that. I would look at Utah State first half. They're very great on speed up the game in the first half. Yep. Try to tire them out early for the second half.
I was thinking 5.5, 6 for full game.
I was thinking about 6. I was thinking 6 probably.
Okay. Yeah, and New Mexico, it's tough to back them on the road. I think I'm with you, Craig, on USU because they're 335th in 3-point to 2-point attempts ratio, which is great if you're getting to the line, if you're making those shots inside the arc that we just talked about. But on the road in Logan, it's a tough place to play no matter what, especially if you can't get out to the perimeter and make a few shots to keep a defense honest with Utah State. All right, best bets, money shot time. And this is where we do give our best bets each and every week. And before we jump into that, I mentioned a passcode earlier in the show. We have one for you that's good up until Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time. It started on Tuesday. It continues on Wednesday. The passcode, jot this down, is TUE10 WED10. TUE10 WED10. It's good for 10% off any of the daily packages from the Doc Sports guys, any of the handicappers. You can use it multiple times, and that includes NBA, NHL, college baskets, props, soccer, any of those daily packages. Again, you see the passcode right there. Good up until 10 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. Craig Trapp, first in the paint show. He's been doing this for a long time. One of the more respected minds of the business. Craig, let's kick things off with your money shot for this week's show.
Yeah, I like Wisconsin getting 4.5, I believe it is. I mean, I just think this is a very good Wisconsin team. I think they're 4-1. No. Yeah, 3-1 in their last 4 games against the spread, and going a little farther back, they're 7-1 against the spread. Now they're facing a Maryland team that have been getting it done as far as winning the games. They've won 3 in a row, including that miracle at Indiana this past weekend. But they're just 1-4 against the spread, and it's a Maryland team that can score points. That's the thing I don't think we have to question. They can score. Can they stop teams, and can they play physical? I just think Wisconsin's the better team. I think Bo Ryan's probably I can't believe we're playing up and down like Wisconsin's been playing this year. And I kind of thought they were going to take a step back with Hepburn leaving for Louisville, but it has not happened. Like, I think Wisconsin is for real, might be the second best team as far as if I was setting power rankings for the Big Ten right now to go far in the NCAA tournament. I probably take Wisconsin after Michigan State. So I think Wisconsin goes on the road and maybe even wins outright. I definitely think they cover in this one.
Good stuff. Raphael, your best bet?
Well, first off, Craig's brown-nosing, picking Wisconsin, even though the boss is from Wisconsin. Jeez, is there?
You know what? Can I say something real quick here? I don't mean I got to jump in. I was going to be nice. Craig's not a newbie to the business by any means, but I was going to be nice and let it slip 1 week. I love Raphael, Craig. He just forget that. Screw that. I'm all over this guy right out of the blocks. But I was thinking the same exact thing. You don't have to kiss DocSports.com's or Wade's butt. You're way too established.
I thought he only followed football. I didn't even know he knew there was a thing called basketball.
He doesn't even follow football either. We're not giving him credit for that. But I also want to introduce Kenneth Duval. It must be from Jacksonville. He's a new member for Doc Sports. Just signed up at 525. So welcome to the show, Kenneth, and welcome to Doc Sports YouTube page. Some great content on there, some great free play videos all day long. So welcome to the Doc's crew. But my free play, we're going late tonight. I'm going late tonight in this game, so I apologize if you're watching in morning. What did I talk about early, Scott? Mountain West. You know who has one of the best against the spread records in college basketball this year? San Jose State. They're 14-3 against the spread this year. They're playing San Diego State. This is not the same San Diego State defense we've seen in years past. This is not the same San Diego State offense we've seen in years past. They're putting up some good numbers. But last year, San Jose State covered both meetings against San Diego State. They're going to do it again. Give me a 15-3 against the spread. It's 14.5 right now. I would say hurry up and get this while I'm talking, while Scott's doing his free play, because his free play is going to cash. Craig's free play is going to cash. Get the 14.5 now, because by tip-off, it's going to be probably around 13.5. I think Joe Public will probably see that stat and say, ooh, I'm going to take the dog on this one. So hurry up and get the 14.5 before Joe Public grabs it.
Good stuff. I'm going to head down. I almost every year for the past 15 years, I make at least one trip to Brentwood to see the UCLA Bruins at Pauley Pavilion. I'm not doing it this season, but just in the last several years, the home court advantage ain't what it used to be, put it that way. It's an odd arena. It's got all that history, but that's the game I'm going to on Thursday night. It's Oregon on the road over UCLA. The Bruins won this season's earlier meeting up in Eugene, 73-71. And the Ducks did shoot pretty well, and they had a big advantage at the charity stripe, but UCLA nailed 12 of 23 three-pointers in that 2-point win. And Mick Cronin doesn't want his team shooting threes. He's bitched and moaned and whined about it many times this year after losses. And we shoot too many threes. We're just firing up threes. We're not working it. So that was kind of an oddball type of stat for UCLA, not only to take that many, but to make that many. They were just on that night. The Ducks are normally solid defending the deep perimeter, and it's going to be their first game on Thursday since that loss on Minnesota. I think the Oregon Ducks get their revenge and do so by a spread covering margin. So I'll go with the Oregon Ducks, a Thursday night game. Guys, listen, it's been great. First time working with Craig Trapp. Going to be many, many more times to do so. Check out all his work over at DocSports.com. For Raphael, for Craig, for our producer, Michelle, I'm Scott Spreitzer. You know what to do, everybody. Let's put him in the win column. We'll see you next week.